Welcome to another edition of Drugs, Crime, and Politics, brought to you by the Drug Policy Forum of Texas. Good evening. I'm your host, Buford Terrell. With me here tonight is my colleague, Clayton Jones.
Good evening.
And tonight we start a new service. The show is now available live on streaming video for those of you that don't have access to Comcast Cablevision, and our producer will be putting up the streaming video address on the screen later in the program. We would also remind you that you can get in touch with us through our email address that will be up, and the phone is live tonight. We hope you'll join the show with your questions or comments as the evening goes on. I think that we're probably tonight going to concentrate somewhat on the current legislative session now underway in Austin, because there are several bills of some concern to us that are underway. I think a couple of things in the general news that we might want to pay attention to. There have been some interesting public demonstrations taking place on the Mexican side of the Rio Grande this week, with citizens protesting, trying to get the government to pull the army out of the border communities to try to cut down on the violence. So it's an interesting twist on the way the people are thinking. Also, a meeting of farmer heads of some South American states at a meeting in Brazil came out and said that the U.S. drug policy was a failure and needed to be reconsidered. A White House spokesman has indicated that President Obama is opposed to the use of federal resources, meaning primarily the DEA, to take actions contrary to state medical marijuana laws. So we'll see if there's an actual change in federal behavior on that standpoint. Likewise, he has already issued directives concerning making federal funds available for syringe exchanges, and apparently the U.S. delegation to the United Nations meeting preparing next year's big report on drugs has been given some new instructions. So a lot seems to be underway, including the appointment of the new drug czar. I'm sure we'll probably mention most of these things as the night progresses tonight. But first, Clayton, would you like to introduce our guest?
Yeah, we have a couple of people come down from Dallas for our program. They're with Texans for Compassionate Care. Steve and Rachel. Betson. Yeah, I did it. Man, my marijuana wasn't too bad on me today. They're here to talk to us about the bill that we have. It's House Bill 164, and it's on affirmative defense. Would you like to try to explain to us what affirmative defense is?
Well, essentially the bill does two things, actually. First of all, it protects the doctors. Under current Texas law, doctors can be punished, they can be sanctioned, have their threats of their doctor's license removed from them if they speak honestly with the patient and say that they believe that medical marijuana would benefit that patient and that the benefits would outweigh the risks. So the first part of the bill addresses that directly. The second part of the bill, as you say, protects patients. And it protects patients really in a different kind of way than many medical marijuana bills have done, in that it gives the patient the affirmative defense. It gives them the right to explain to a jury why they broke the law. If I'm speeding my wife to the hospital, I can generally tell the jury, hey, I was speeding because my wife was in a critical condition and I had to get her to the hospital, and that would be accepted.
Well,
under current state
that's
law.
not exactly an affirmative defense.
Well,
That's
but
more a necessity defense.
Yeah, but under
an
current
affirmative defense is one actually provided by the law as an exception to the rule.
and well, what it would essentially do is it would make the judges listen to that defense. It would
Yes.
make them allow that defense in court to be able to explain to the jury and the judge why we broke the law. and then they would get to decide whether they want
Actually,
to.
as an affirmative defense, it would be even more. It would require the judge to instruct the jury that if they found, as a matter of fact, that the person was using it for medical purposes under a doctor's recommendation, that the law required them to find him not guilty. So it's more than just saying the jury can consider it.
Okay.
I have to be a lawyer.
Well, yeah.
And what got you involved in this, Steve?
Well, yeah, if you talked to me 5 years ago, I really didn't believe in medical marijuana 5 years ago. But I watched my wife suffer, and I watched her slowly get worse and worse. And I'm actually going to let her tell her story later, but basically, in fact, why don't you tell your story? And
Now, we understand that this is about your first time to speak to the public
Publicly?
in general.
And this is a very emotional issue. I think
I'm
for
sure that
all
it is.
patients, I'm sure, the issue of medical marijuana is very emotional. I became sick about 4 years ago, and I was a medical mystery until last March. So for the majority of the past 4 years, nobody knew what was wrong with me. I slowly lost my ability to walk and had lots of neurological symptoms. Felt like I had the flu all the time and was in lots of pain, and it was just getting worse. And I was working as a speech therapist, had just started a little private practice that was doing well. And I was upset because I was going to have to close it. I had tried 4 or 5 different pain medicines, and the pain medicines either didn't work for me or they would lay me out flat on the couch. I would hallucinate.
Right.
I would have floaters. I would have auditory hallucinations, visual hallucinations. Very scary experiences. And for somebody that's in chronic pain, that's not really a good solution. And for me, I know for me it was not a solution. So I was going to have to give up my business. And one morning on our front porch we had a package, and we opened it up, and inside there were 2 sandwich bags of marijuana and a note. And it was from somebody in our community that said, "You need to try this for your pain, and I hope that it helps." So I did. And the results were not what we were expecting at all. Instead of feeling like I was drugged, like I had been on the other pain medicines, I was able to think, I was able to work, and the marijuana gave strong pain relief. And at this point, I was also starting to develop chronic nausea. I was having trouble eating. I was starting to lose weight.
How were you consuming it? Were you smoking, vaporizing, eating?
I started with smoking, and we got on the internet and tried to find other ways to use it, and also to look at what the research said and to see what other people were doing and to see if it was effective.
And which vaporizer do you end up using?
I have a Volcano.
They're wonderful.
Yeah, Volcano vaporizer. So for the most part, vaporization. Started out smoking, but also in food is another way, or drinking it.
I find eating it to be extremely beneficial.
Well, I might throw in a couple of things here. Most people have found that when they eat, there's a much slower onset of the effect,
Right.
and it's longer lasting, so that it's a much more even through the day kind of feeling. That's one thing. And on the other, I want to comment about the vaporizers. And I honestly think we're probably at least 2 or 3 generations behind on vaporizer technology. But if you listen to the real opponents of medical marijuana, they've just about run out of arguments. And the first argument most of them throw out these days is that if you smoke it, it's not a medicine. No real medicine is smoked. And if you smoke, you got all the harmful stuff you do with smoking cigarettes. first, they're wrong about both of those, but more than that, more and more I'm hearing both medical patients and recreational users are using vaporizers so that they avoid all of the objections and possible harm caused by smoking. And I think that the word needs to get out more. That vaporizers are a viable means of administration and that they avoid all of the supposed harms of smoking.
Right. And I found that it's very gentle on my body as well to use a vaporizer. But right away, when I start to use marijuana, the sharp pains start to dull. The twitching that's constant in my legs and my arms starts to die down. And it's a dramatic difference. And they did finally, last year, diagnose me. It turned out that I have late-stage Lyme disease. But because I didn't ever have a rash and my antibody tests were always negative.
And it's also a very unusual disease in this part of the country.
So it took them a long time.
I'd like to ask, you talked about trying other kinds of painkillers. Were those opioids of some kind or another?
Most of them were opioids, muscle relaxers.
Fentanyl patches.
So that what in effect we have here is a substitution of marijuana for the strong opioids like Oxycontin or fentanyl,
hydrocodone.
in other words, hydrocodone, all of the different heroin equivalents.
Yeah.
So,
Right. And as far as the nausea is concerned, I haven't had any medicine that works as well as quelling the nausea and also bringing back my appetite. I have to take about 35 pills a day to keep my immune system going and to kill the disease that I have. And I have to keep 35 pills down and try to swallow them all.
Not fun.
Right.
And you know, that's, I think, another one of the objections that comes up to the DEA's much touted synthetic THC or Marinol. They claim that it's as effective, although I've never found a patient or doctor that says that.
Oh, it works.
But there's some irony.
It works. There's no doubt in my mind that it doesn't work.
Well,
because
there's a
I've
bunch
used
of there are a bunch of objections to it, though.
Yeah, but
And
it
one of
does
the
work.
biggest is the irony of trying to take a pill to quell nausea so bad that you can't keep anything on your stomach.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big objections.
You got to wait
Yes.
30 minutes for it to actually kick in,
Yeah.
and 30 minutes is too late usually.
Yeah.
So,
And the other objection I've heard to it is that with the pill, it's an all or nothing dose, and many people complain that it got them much too high. Whereas with smoking, they had almost instantaneous total control. Could get just enough to get relief, but without enough to get...
Now, see, I found quite differently. If I took a 2.5 milligram at lunchtime and 5 milligrams at night, and I'm not saying being sick, I'm saying for the appetite suppressant and pain,
Well,
taking care of the pain, it worked wonderfully. But if I was sick, where I was throwing up dry heaves, no.
well, you bring up something else I think that's important here too, Clayton. And another objection that we frequently hear is, why do people need marijuana when there are other drugs, legal drugs, that do the same thing? And what you're pointing out, both of you in fact, is that everyone's reaction to drugs is different.
Exactly.
You apparently can use the Marinol for a lot of things where other people can't. You indicate very strong, unfavorable reactions to the stronger opioid painkillers, where for many people they're quite satisfactory. And this is the thing, more and more as doctors get into the genetic side of medicine, they're finding out that the individual reactions to any medicine are going to vary greatly from individual to individual, and there needs to be a selection of medicines available to find the one for that person.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to keep interrupting you, so go ahead, please.
Oh, no, that's fine. Well, like I said, once I started the treatment back in March or so, I was starting to get better, but unfortunately, the way that Lyme disease works is that once you start the treatment, start killing the bacteria, they release all of their neurotoxins. So then your body has this essentially poison that it's trying to deal with.
Yeah.
So I did have to give up working last summer, and I've been working at home with my husband Stephen, who has been really instrumental in getting this project going, getting the Texas Coalition for Compassionate Care off the ground. He's volunteered to be our director and has helped to coordinate the effort throughout the state.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of good work being done by you, Stephen.
Well, let me ask you one more question
Sure.
before we start picking on Stephen. And this is, what did your doctors say when you talked about marijuana to them?
Well, I've told several different kinds of doctors, neurologist, gastroenterologist, psychologist, in fact, as well as my main MD, and all of them have given me favorable responses. Some of them have said that marijuana would help somebody that is in my condition. Some of them have gone as far to say that marijuana is good medicine for me, or some of them have even said that it is the best medicine for somebody in my situation. So I've gotten lots of support from my doctors.
I'm really amazed and pleasantly surprised at that. And I think the other question that we have to ask, and it's one that you don't have to answer, that's one nice thing about a show like this, is this has been going on for nearly a year now. Have you had any problems with the law?
We have not.
No.
Do you have any problem getting your supply?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Definitely.
That's another area that we do need to consider is access. Because
Okay,
not
and we need to
everybody-
take a break, and we'll talk about access when we come back. Let's take a break now, and we'll rejoin you in a minute or two.
What's this story about? This story is about a small little town that got sick and tired of the dope dealers.
This is a story about a town that wanted to send a message to the black community.
46 people indicted for selling powder cocaine. And then we looked at the addresses. We knew that there'd been a raid on Blacktown.
I was the first white guy that said in public, this is wrong.
We talked about it in a church Sunday school class a little bit and got severely put down.
I've never seen sentences this routinely severe. Really quick trials, really bad lawyers, no investigation by the defense whatsoever.
They were just people who were working every day and trying to get by with their lives. Nobody gave a damn about locating Mr. Big or the real dealers or who was really bringing the stuff in. Halfway through Coleman's undercover operation in Tulia, it turns out that Coleman is wanted for arrest on charges out of this other county he used to work in.
Coleman was going to be on the stand this time for as long as it took. It was going to be finally the day in court that the defendants had never got.
Being in prison for something that I didn't do. Each person that has something to do with that Tulia drugs thing should never be able to work in law enforcement ever again.
M-A-P-I-N-C.
Yeah, because I got his name from...
Okay, we're back on the air again. We're talking with Mr. and Ms. Betson from Dallas, Compassionate Care. She's a medical marijuana patient, and it's turned Steve into a medical marijuana activist. Before the break, Clayton, you were starting to complain a little bit about access to medical marijuana.
You know, my big problem with this illegalness of discrimination against me is trying to always find access to quality weed. I've had $1,200 taken out of my hand with a gun put in my face. And it's disgusting. These are the type of things that a good bill in our state.
Yeah.
No. Unfortunately, I don't care how good the state bill is. The problem of access is going to be strictly a matter of federal law. We can look, for instance, at New Mexico, where their bill actually provides for the state to set up a distribution system. The state really can't order its employees to break the federal law. They can tell their employees to ignore the federal law, but not to break it. What has allowed the DEA to interfere in California has been that the federal law still controls the entire distribution chain. And as long as the federal law includes marijuana as a controlled substance and a Schedule I controlled substance in particular, no state is going to be effective in setting up a state-level distribution chain.
But New Mexico has just gone through and they're going forward with their plans on central growers,
Yeah.
and that they are going to be the distributors and they will be an officer of their Health and Human Services.
Okay.
And if they do this, that the state will protect them statewide, but they cannot protect them federally.
That's right. And what I'm saying is that anytime the state government directs any of its employees to participate in any way in a distribution scheme, including inspection, licensing, anything else, that employee can refuse to do that on the grounds that he's not going to violate the federal law. The DEA can come in at any time and bust every state employee engaged in it.
Yep.
There's no satisfactory solution to sourcing and distribution at the state level.
Well, I think that we can look at states that have passed medical marijuana laws, like let's say Colorado, and I think it's fairly reasonable to argue that in Colorado, a patient is much safer when obtaining their marijuana. They're much more assured that it's not laced with opioids and other things that they don't want in there. They can even be assured to some extent that it doesn't have pesticides and fertilizers on it. So, and I mean, I can understand what you're saying.
I believe, though, that there was one distributor in Colorado that was busted by the feds this last month. Mm-hmm. It was the first time.
But
they've been focusing on California because the publicity is so much greater and it's much more public. But I really honestly can't see any state legitimately putting its employees at risk by setting up any kind of controlled distribution process. I mean, the federal system is just so corrupt on this area that it pollutes everything it touches.
Oh, I agree. But I do think that we are going to get into direct challenges of this by the states. You've got Colorado's going to a dispensary system. New Mexico is saying that you are a authorized grower, you are going to work under my Health and Human Services, you're an unpaid employee, and the feds come in at you, we're no help to you. But, our Health and Human Services, they are going to inspect your facilities.
As I say, what happens when Health and Human Services say, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to violate the federal law? I will say that in New Mexico, one nurse has brought a federal lawsuit against the DEA claiming that the DEA is unconstitutionally infringing upon the state's right to declare what is or is not a medicine. And since I'm primarily the guy that thought that theory up about 6 months ago, I'm pretty optimistic about its chances of success we'll have to see what the courts do.
There's also a bunch of cases that have been started. I don't know exactly how many. One was out of New Mexico, that they were challenging the DEA position on marijuana because the DEA says it has no medical
That's
value.
what I'm talking about. This is my
the same
theory,
one.
constitutional theory. And the New Mexico case is further along than any of them. But,
Yes.
Steve, how did you get involved in this mess?
Well, you pretty much heard her story, and mine is pretty much the same. I mean, I watched my wife suffer, and you know, I really didn't believe in medical marijuana. I was never really against it because I never really felt that the government should be telling doctors what they can and can't do as far as treating a patient. But I can honestly say that I thought it was a hoax at one time, that I thought it was fake, and I have a lot of atoning to do. Because when somebody you love this much is hurt by it, and then you realize that people with your previous position are keeping you from moving forward by either not getting involved or not doing anything, it's hurtful. But I mean, we were in a dark place when it landed on our porch. She had stopped taking the opioids at that point because it was more preferable to be in pain and somewhat functional than to be hallucinating and lethargic in bed. And the marijuana arrived on our porch, and we tried it, and it worked. My wife went to work every day for a whole month, and there are little things that you just don't consider. I was able to dance with my wife in our living room. Those types of things change your opinion real fast when you see somebody that you love, their quality of life improving so much. And then I got involved in Texans for medical marijuana, and that group, as some of you may know, closed its doors in 2007, and we started talking with other patients and advocates around Texas that were also part of that group, and we decided that there needed to be something. We needed something pushing forward, so we started the Texas Coalition for Compassionate Care, and we are actually building it as a coalition of organizations. We have our sign-on statement, and we are getting churches and ministers, civic organizations to sign on to the sign-on statement. We're also going to be looking at getting judges to sign on to the statement. And essentially the statement is that we agree that licensed healthcare providers should not be punished for recommending the medical use of marijuana to seriously ill people, and seriously ill people should not be subjected to criminal sanction for using marijuana if their healthcare provider has told them that such use is likely to be beneficial. It's pretty to the point. This is a fight that's about compassion. It's about loving your neighbor enough to allow them to care for themselves in their time of need.
I believe we have a phone call. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
My question is, the distributors who are distributing medicinal marijuana, do they have to be doctors, or how are they regulated?
Okay.
The requirements to become a medicinal distributor.
Thank you.
California has dispensaries, and the dispensaries have been a big bone of contention with the government. These dispensary owners, one that I know, Richard, out in Oakland, he started his business out there in '96. He buys his marijuana. They have a regulation on how to get a medical card for marijuana. And you show your card and you bring your money, you buy what you want, and you pay the state sales tax, and you go out the door. Police won't bother you if you have your medical card with you, unless somebody is trying to just have a bad day.
We mentioned earlier that New Mexico is trying to set up a regulated dispensary system all the way from growers through the final consumer. California has a dispensary system which has got some really bad problems as well as being effective. But unfortunately, in the other 11 states, your medical marijuana dispenser is your friendly street corner dope pusher.
Dealer. Right.
And there's no nicer way to say it than that. I think all of the states do have a provision for patients to grow their own, but to me that's always looked pretty problematic. I hear it's time for another break, so we'll see you in about 2 minutes.
Hello, I'm Nadia Swaby with the Marijuana Policy Project. Today's question comes to us from our YouTube subscriber, Ray Sputin. He asks about the truth behind some strange numbers the White House Office on National Drug Control Policy and others have put out lately. According to the ONDCP's Marijuana and Teens fact sheet, each year more teens enter treatment with a primary diagnosis of marijuana dependence than for all other illicit drugs combined. Sounds scary, right? Prohibitionists regularly claim that one of marijuana's main dangers is that it's addictive. But if you've seen our episode number 3, you know that's stretching the truth. The federal government's own statistics show that the majority of people in treatment for marijuana abuse or dependence did not seek treatment. They were forced into it because they were arrested. Imagine you're given 2 choices, rehab or prison. Which one would you take? In the government's eyes, all marijuana use is abuse, plain and simple. According to the treatment episode data set highlights, only 15% of those in marijuana treatment sought treatment voluntarily. Also, according to the TEDS data, over 1/3 of those in treatment for marijuana abuse or dependence did not use marijuana at all in the 1 month prior to admission, and more than half used it 3 times or less. These are addicts. Would you call someone who had 3 beers in a month an alcoholic? The truth is, we arrest people for smoking marijuana, force them into treatment that most of them don't need, then use those treatment admissions as proof that marijuana is addictive. Sounds pretty Orwellian?
You're watching the Drug, Crime, and Politics show. I need less business. Help change the laws. Fewer people locked up for this foolishness will help all of us.
Now that's going to block out the professor.
Well, let him block me out. Well, we're back. We were hearing about the Coalition for Compassionate Care. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you all have a website, Steve?
Yes, we do. It's TexasCompassion.com. And one of the things that you can actually do right now, or as soon as the show's over with, is you can go there and you can sign up for the email updates. That's where we direct our efforts at the state and towards the representatives and senators so that you can find out what we're doing.
And that's TexasCompassion, all one word.com.
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, I got a question for you. Last Tuesday when we were up at the state capitol, Jane Nelson, Senator Jane Nelson, who's the head of the Health and Human Services in the Senate, we were told by Joyce West, Senator, that he had to know if she would give it a hearing. Tell us about that.
Well,
I mean, what kind of malarkey is this? Is that just a delay?
Well, I'm not exactly sure that that's what he said. I think that they were saying that that would help. If we could get her to say that she would allow it to have a hearing, it would help to cajole him into putting forth a very rational bill, companion bill to House Bill 164. I'm not convinced that we have to get that on the table. I think it's I would be surprised if heads of committees are used to being asked that question of whether they're going to allow a hearing before it's even been put on the table. So,
if I can throw my rather cynical view in, and believe me, when it comes to Austin, cynical is the only way to approach it. I think it's way too early in the session to expect any commitment one way or another from anyone in the Senate. What every member of the state Senate is saying right now is, let's wait and see what the House does, and if it dies a death in the House, we don't have to say anything.
That's right.
And so don't expect anything from the Senate until the House at least schedules hearings and probably no real action in the Senate until the House acts on the bill.
Yeah, and that's actually what when I believe that we'll be able to get Senator West to do something is that if we can show that it's going to get a hearing, that's relevant information that he needs to know, and he may decide to put something forward and be a leader. He may decide to wait until after it gets voted out of committee and follow the House and just kind of follow it through. So,
but I would say right now, almost all of the effort in Washington should be aimed at the House side.
Well, in Austin, you mean?
In Austin.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah.
So
what kind of response have you been getting from your trying to get people active in your coalition?
Well, I think right now, since it is a young coalition, we did officially start last year in September. And I think right now a lot of organizations are kind of stepping back, and they want to be able to trust us. We need to build that relationship with them. We've had a lot of positive feedback. In fact, it's almost all positive feedback. I've never had a minister tell me flat out no. AIDS organizations specifically are proposing it to the board of directors as we speak. And so I do think that right now, I think that especially with some ministers, they're stepping back and they want to see that they can trust us, that we are working on medical marijuana, and that is our issue.
But we're basically more of a continuation of Texans for medical marijuana. That's where we start with a base, and then we're growing from there.
That's true. As far as the email base, all the members that joined Texans for medical marijuana, we did receive all their information, and we're using that. We are kind of going on a different path than that organization took. It did a wonderful job. I can't criticize.
Oh, they did tremendous work.
But we are looking to get churches involved. In fact, it was a staffer in a representative's office that told me directly, and it sounded kind of bad to me, but they said you can bring us doctors all you want. Doctors see constituents once, twice a year. Bring us ministers. They see constituents every single weekend. And ministers are also the people that get to that minister to their congregation in their most trying times of life. They see what's happening.
Yeah.
And most of them are on our side.
And I think it's time for me to throw my normal plug in here. And this is to remember that representative works for you, but he can't respond to your wishes unless you let him know what they are. And it's important that you write them. If you can't write them, email or phone them. But the most important thing you can do is go pay a personal call on your state representatives. They all have local offices. They all have hours scheduled in those local offices.
That's right.
And the representative areas are small enough so that local representative's office is within reach of almost all of us.
I mean, Dwayne Bohack is my representative, and he is not on board with this issue, or should I say he wasn't in the very beginning.
Yeah.
And he has been very receptive. He has actually read things that I have given to him.
Yeah.
They are very, and I find going to visit them, whether they are your representative or another representative from another district, and they do listen to you.
Well, I'll say this, and I try to follow the news from all across the country. And one thing that has struck me, and it doesn't matter whether it's in Texas or whether it's in Michigan or someplace else, the number of politicians who have spoken out in favor of medical marijuana, who said that they were against it until a constituent came to visit them who was a medical marijuana patient and who told them their personal story. And it's amazing the number of politicians that have said, I had to wipe the tears out of my eyes, but that made me think my position over. So these are the people that need to go see the representatives. So,
Right, and we've had positive responses from the representatives' offices that we visited as well, and from the senator's office as well. Senator Royce West's staff has also been very compassionate.
yeah, and remember, each of us has only one representative in the legislature, one Senate representing our district in the legislature. That's just 2 people. That doesn't take much time or effort to get in touch with 2 people. And if you can't go visit them, you certainly can write them or call them or email them. And probably, as Steve has indicated, if you have a sympathetic priest or preacher, see if you can get them on board and get them to make that visitor call. You know, it's one thing. You can take someone that looks like that, someone that looks like me, and that representative is likely to think, yeah, that's just another damn stoner that wants an excuse to buy weed. But if Clayton goes in and takes his preacher with him, it's a slightly different story.
Right.
Changes the conversation.
Yeah.
It changes the conversation. It lets them know that this is not about, this fight specifically is not about ending the war on drugs. It's about having the compassion, the minimum in compassion, to remove the sick and the dying from the battlefield.
Right.
And that's what we're talking about here.
And ministers deal with end-of-life issues. You know, they see their people that are from their church that are sick. And so all of the ministers that have either come to us or that we have approached have been very positive with us, and they understand this issue.
We have another caller.
Hello, caller.
Hello, this is Dean Becker calling. Who am I speaking with?
This is Clayton in Beaufort. Dean, glad to have you with us.
You didn't sound the same. I don't know how to...
Well, we were singing a duet there, and the voices together probably messed you up.
Well, okay. Yeah, I wanted to touch base with you guys. I know you're talking medical marijuana mostly today, but I wanted to let you know I interviewed the chief of police, Harold Hurt, yesterday on my... It aired today. I interviewed him yesterday on cultural baggage.
Yeah.
And we had a pretty good discussion. I don't think I swayed the man a bit. He seems to be still in line with Sheriff John Short, to be honest with you. I don't see, at least publicly, that he's willing to move an inch as far as the drug war goes. Also had an interview yesterday with Irma Rios. She's the director of the Houston Crime Lab. And she gave me a tour of the lab and looked at the weapons lab and the drug lab and so forth. And we talked, and, you know, she was very forthcoming. I think, you know, didn't necessarily delve into drug policy at all, but it was a very interesting discussion. That's on the Cultural Baggage Show. And then on Tuesday, I did interview Mike Gray. He's author of Drug Crazy.
Right.
Chairman of Common Sense for Drug Policy. And we just had a good roundhouse discussion, kind of ripped the drug war to shreds, if you will.
I believe Mike started out basically as a journalist years ago, didn't he?
But no, he's actually a screenwriter.
Okay, that's right.
He wrote the screenplay for China Syndrome, which was actually nominated for an Academy Award. And then yesterday I talked with Ken Walski, which probably dovetails more with what you guys have been talking about. And Ken and Jim Miller are heading a push up in New Jersey for medical marijuana, and having some success getting it out of committee in the House, I believe, and trying to move it through to the whole legislature. And there's some other news that I caught today that in Washington State they now have passed a Senate bill which reclassifies adult possession of no more than 40 grams from a misdemeanor to a civil infraction. So
40 grams?
The state seems to be moving further and further away from the prohibition model, if you will. And then there's other good news coming out of Washington State. They now have a overdose prevention bill that's modeled itself on what they have in New Mexico, wherein if a couple of friends are together and one thinks the other has OD, they can call the police and no one will be arrested. And it's a good common sense way to save lives. And it's mostly young people that are out there messing up and taking those hot shots. They don't know what's in the bag. And for what it's worth, I'm headed to Oakland tomorrow. I'm going to go out there and do a little studying at Oaksterdam University and just kind of sort through some things, get some interviews while I'm out there. And mostly, I always appreciate this opportunity to speak to your viewers and just tell them that this drug war is ending. I don't know if it's going to take a year or 10 more years, but it'll come around a lot sooner if they will just dare to write a 50-word letter, send it to their congressman, the mayor, etc. Tell them their opinion.
I really honestly, Dean, think like the cracks are in the wall. It's just waiting for somebody to give that last little push to make it all crumble.
I've been working with my sledgehammer swing. Let's see what we can do better, right?
Hey, Dean.
Yes, Clay.
Dean, you were saying back during the campaign for elections that you had the debate between the two people that were running for district attorney.
At Lycos and
yes. And our chief said that he was going to have a lot to say if he got elected to the post about the drug war. He didn't elaborate what he thinks should have been changed.
All I can tell you is that the day of the debate, we were in two different rooms. I was in one room with Pat Lycos, and Clarence Bradford was in another room with Terry Nelson, the elite member, 32 years, guarding the borders for America. And they were talking like, they agreed on just about every subject. And it didn't work when I came up through the ranks. It's not working now. And I think he would have made one heck of a difference had he been elected.
Okay, thank you, Dean. And people can find you at 11:30 on Tuesday and Thursday on KPTFT.
KPFT 90.1 FM. And you can check out hundreds of my shows. They're available online at drugtruth.net. We just picked up our 61st station, WBRR, and up in Michigan. I can't think of the name.
Well, thank you, and be sure and check out Dean's now worldwide radio network. Okay.
Dean is always doing something good. Dean, when you go out to Oakland, say hi to Richard for me.
Yeah. I might also point out something. Dean mentioned his interview with the head of the Houston Police Crime Lab, which, of course, in the last few years has been primary scandal for a number of reasons. And right now, the crime lab is extremely important in a lot of cases involving DNA testing, firearms and ballistics testing, things like true traces from burglaries. Yet we have to wonder, how much time does that lab waste doing drug tests to see if a substance really is marijuana or cocaine or something else? It has to be a phenomenal chunk of their time that could be better spent on many other things.
Of course. Our police enforcement is so lax in what it does. It thinks it's great to spend 3 hours booking somebody for simple possession, rather than going out looking for somebody that actually we need to be protected from. That's what I always thought prisons were for. It's for the people you have to be protected from, not a person who grows a plant.
California, once again, is facing an interesting dilemma in that 3 federal judges have, in effect, ordered them to release a substantial part of their prison population immediately because they're overcrowded to the point of being inhumane and unconstitutional, and they've got budget problems out there that are unbelievable. And we've got to take another break already.
Years, you've heard nothing but criticism and second-guessing. Why weren't we warned about the attacks of 9/11 before they happened? Now here we are, in the drug war. It's the 10th of September. The alarm bells are screaming. Are you listening?
Reference. We're back again for our last segment. I'd like to remind everyone that Houston Normal will be having a meeting tomorrow night, February the 19th, at 7:30 at the West Gray Cafeteria. I'm not sure of the exact address, but that's on West Gray, east of Montrose, I believe.
Yes, it's east of Montrose.
Just a couple of blocks east of Montrose. That's at 7:30 tomorrow night. And Clayton, I believe you've got an announcement.
They're having a talk over at the Unitarian Church on the Mexican drug cartels, what we can expect to be happening and what we could do to make things happen better. It's going to be a talk by John Mason Hart, and who is a professor here at the University of Houston. And it's going to be February 25th at 7 o'clock at 5200 Fannin Street. I think it would be very worthwhile for anybody who is interested in this prohibition on how to end it. Would be a very good lecture for you to go to.
Okay, and while we've still got a little time left, what kind of plans do you have for the next few weeks, Steve?
Well, for the next few weeks, we're going to be working the bill through the Public Health Committee in the House. And in fact, that's one thing that people can do right now is they can contact the members of the Public Health Committee and ask them to vote for it.
Okay, who's the chair of that committee?
The chair of that committee is Lois Kolkhorst, and the vice chair is Elliot Neistat, who's author of House Bill 164.
And where can people go to find a list of the members of that committee?
They can go online to if you Google Texas House and click on committees. You can also go to our website. It will be up within a week. Because I do have the list together. Our email list usually precedes what goes onto our website by a few days. So,
if you do that, could I ask that you include office phone numbers and email addresses for them?
Yes, I do.
Out?
Yes. And another thing that people can do, you mentioned getting your ministers to call and speak with the representatives with them. They can also ask the ministers to sign on to the sign-on statement of compassion that I read earlier. You can go to our website and click on statements of support, and there's a PDF there that you can download. You can have your minister sign it. You can have your church sign it. You can have civic organizations sign it, patient organizations sign it. And there's a difference in some churches between the minister and the church, so sometimes ministers have more autonomy. So ask both of them.
And I might also add, that we've had a very brave person join us tonight to share a story publicly. And it's something that more people need to do. And you don't have to go on television. You don't have to go testify in front of the legislature. Many people have a Sunday school class that they attend, or they have a group that they play bridge with once a week or something else. You know, you can tell your story in small, supportive groups. You don't have to stand up in the glare of the TV lights or worry about public speaking. But the more people who can see the human side of medical marijuana, and especially the costly, painful human side of not having medical marijuana, the sooner we'll get true reform on this issue. We're in the last 3 or 4 minutes here. Anything to...
Yes, we all need to start a letter-writing campaign to your representatives, state senators, Jane Nelson, Royce West. The more letters they receive, the more they are likely to move. And the senators will do it at their own pace. Now, I guess they have to do it for their own cover, wait till the House sees what they do. And we need that support. It's not going to go anywhere without the public support.
And when you're working on that, you should also keep in mind that we've already won the public support. 75% of the people in Texas, when polled, are for medical marijuana. 67% of Republicans, and it's actually not the lowest demographic in the state of Texas. The lowest demographic in the state of Texas is 62% in favor of medical marijuana. So no matter what demographic you look at, there are at least 62% in favor of medical marijuana in the state of Texas. 75% total. We've already won. There's no reason to hide in your home anymore. Most of the people here are compassionate.
The legislation is just way behind the curve.
Yes, it is.
Do you have any last comments you'd like to add tonight?
Well, thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
And thank you for allowing me to share my story. Like you said, the issue of medical marijuana, it's about science and politics and the law. But for people that are sick, for people that are even dying, you know, that want to die with some comfort and with dignity and with less pain at the end, medical marijuana really is about compassion. Yeah.
And I'll give you my normal wrap-up. The foundation of this country, and it says so in great big letters, is we the people. We the people hire those legislators and congressmen. We can fire them. We give them their instructions, but it's up to us to make sure they get the message loud and clear. So please call us and email us here on the show. Participate in our program because this is your show. But it's much more important that you get the message out to the politicians. Tell them that we the people have already decided marijuana is legal. Why don't they just catch up with us? Because that's what the numbers show. So I'd like to thank our guest all the way down from Dallas. I encourage you to look at Texas Compassionate Coalition. We'll see you next time.
The present policy of drug prohibition is hopeless. It is hopeless. It will never get better. Literally, victory today is being defined as slowing down the pace of defeat.
We ought to listen to science and medicine when it comes to whether marijuana or any other substance has a medical benefit.
The fact that marijuana is the less dangerous drug.
We're going full-blown into a program that has failed and failed every other time we've tried it. Please point out one success in 30 years of an eradication program that has stopped drugs from coming to this country. Point out one success, because I reviewed that research and there is none.